Idea that Russian Revolution happens because of, I don't know, Germans bought off Lenin or Bolsheviks, because the Jews paid Bolsheviks. It's an attempt to take away attention from the main problem of Russian Empire, previously to 1917. In Russian Empire, oppression of minorities, of serfs, of farming people, people who work at the land, was so aggressive that people are starved to death. Literally starved to death. Not in sense of communists starve people to death. And to think that Russian Revolution was created from the outside to destroy the country, to, I don't know, create some dream or utopian empire just because some group of people wanted to, it's just simply stupid. Russian Revolution happened long before the 1917. In 1905, it was the race of decabrists, riots, or I don't know, rebellion of decabrists, Decembrists, let's say in English. And that already shown how poorly managed Russian Empire and how poorly, how little Tsar and his nobility are pay attention to what is happening there on the land. Saying that Russian Revolution happens just because of invasion of foreign capital or foreign interest, or the Jews did it, it's taking away attention from the main problem, that people on the land who literally produced the wealth of the country lived in slave-like conditions, and sometimes even was literal slaves. Yeah, slavery was abolished, yet nothing changed for the people of the land. Since 1860 and until the Russian Revolution, process is just getting worse, because conditions that people was provided with to get some piece of land, not the land, but the piece of land, was so awfully made, was so awfully created that it was unlivable for the majority of population of Russia. It was like 85% of population still worked on the land and did not promote it to the cities to create industries, etc. And in such conditions, revolution was simply inevitable. And saying that Russian Revolution have no natural causes, but American Revolution at the same time have natural causes, it's pretty uneducated, I guess. Not that say stupid, but uneducated, misinformed, disinformed. So your attention is taken away from the real problem. Russian Revolution was the revolution to free the people from the slavery, pretty much. And when Russian Revolution against slavery is a bad thing, it was made up, it was made by Jews, Germans, Japanese, doesn't matter who, by who. That Lenin was simply a shill, that he was sold-out agent for someone. But the American Revolution is, of course, all about to free the slaves. Not that it just was... the elite is changed, taxes still paid. You, as Americans, still paid taxes, and I heard sometimes even worse taxes than previously. And the American Revolution does not take away the ruling class. It simply changed the name from the British Empire to American Empire. That's pretty much all that changed. For the working people, nothing changed at all during that time. For slaves, yes, sometimes it changed, but it doesn't change right away. It took how many, 200 years already, almost, to abolish racial segregation altogether in the United States. So understanding of why Russian Revolution happens, it's the key to answer who was the communists and who was the Bolsheviks during the time of revolution. Because Bolsheviks, despite of the name, which called majorist, or how to say it, majorityists, despite of the name, it was a minor political force in Russia. And until the revolution happens, revolution not that great, October Revolution, but the first revolution, which many Americans didn't even heard of, revolution happens in the February of 1917, and majority of Senate in that time was presented by sometimes left, but mostly by right-wing extremists, nationalists, not imperialists, how to say it, royalists, by the people who still defend the right of how to represent it, the right of the slave owners to own slave, let's say. So the exploitation would continue in that period. None of Americans ever thought why Red won, even though until 1922 in Russia there was foreign military forces who in other case could simply overcome, if the majority of population would support anti-communist forces, if the majority would support the white movement, because it was red and against white. If the majority of population would support white movement, then Bolsheviks and the communists overall wouldn't make it until the 1990s. Correct me if I'm wrong, but more people beat less people. And it must tell you that majority of the population still was in support of communist agenda and communist actions, because you can say all you want, but in the terms of in the times of the Civil War, if you say one thing and do another, you will simply get shot, because majority of population still had guns. It was civil war. It means that people fight against each other. Yes, many people, white army, the anti-communist alliance and the anti-communist army never could provide enough army to stand against Red Army. And it happened because majority of population saw what communists do, what Bolsheviks, in this case, what Bolsheviks do, how they present themselves, what they doing for the majority of population, etc. And because of it, afterwards of Russian Revolution, and afterwards, Bolsheviks took over the Senate because mostly left-leaning social democrats was unable to provide something for the majority of population. So if majority wins and minority is still insist that they supposed to rule over in some shape or form, because the God said so, because we think that it's better, because we are better, etc. It means that majority of population felt changes, and took the side of those who treat them better, who provide, not promise, but already provide something better today for the people, for majority of the people. In this case, you understand that Russian Revolution, first of all, did not happen because Bolsheviks made the revolution. Bolsheviks didn't make the revolution. Even more so, the first Senate of newly born country wasn't all that Bolsheviks. There was presented many parties. Of course, mostly the left-leaning, yet they was in words left, like today American Social Democrats. In the words they was pro-left, in reality they was pro-rich still. And in such terms, Bolsheviks took over not because they was majority, not because they make people afraid of them, how small group of people could made I don't know how many, 140 million of Russian population afraid of them. How is it possible? The group of 20 or maybe 30 people make everyone afraid of them, when in the same time, on the same land, there was Social Democrats who was represented by thousands and thousands of people. In the same time, there was White Army, and not one army, but many white armies that was also represented by not thousands, but tens, and even sometimes by hundreds of thousands of people. Of course, mostly they was, and those armies was made of the people who, in such terms, will lose their ability to exploit other people. And there was a lot of those people. So you must simply understand that it's not, the Russian Revolution was not about Bolsheviks whatsoever. The outcome of Russian Revolution was very in the dark, I guess. Even in August of 1917, no one could, how to say it, no one could say or guess even what future will be after August of 1917, because there was no plans to overthrow the government, because there was no plans to create a new revolution or something along those lines. No, the revolution happens because of unlivable conditions for majority of population, and majority of population was in support of politics that was how this word, I don't know, was made, let's say, and majority of population of Russian Empire during the time was in favor of politics that was made by Bolshevik party, by the communists. It means that in today's world, when you're saying that communism is about oppression, it's about starve people to death, etc., you simply repeating American propaganda slogans that was created in America without any information from communist countries, which doesn't ever exist, of course. And this understanding must lead you to simply deny the fact that, first of all, Russian Revolution happens because some foreign involvement. Vice versa, the foreign involvement was against Russian Revolution. Even Germans was here, support somebody, I forget who. French army, German army, American army, Japanese army, Turkish forces, British forces. There was a lot of military forces that was presented during that time in Russia, in Soviet Russia even. And yet And yet, none of those forces was in support of Bolsheviks. Even the Jews, I have no idea, once again, how the Jews supposed to set their money on small group of people who have no political, how to say it, political influence, who have no basis in the working people. When Social Democrats, for example, cadets, I forget how to call them, cadet, it's constitutional Democrats. There was Social Democrats, there was Constitutional Democrats, there was many parties, and these Social Democrats, socialists, straight up socialists, they was supported by majority of people who lean to the left, not Bolsheviks. It's simply stupid to think that small group of people in 1917, don't forget, it's not the 21st century, it's not even the end of the 20th century. There was no so big propaganda. There wasn't so big propaganda, such a big propaganda machine. There was no ability to create so many propaganda and brainwash people and get them on your side, etc. In these conditions, you must understand that, again, it was very, very small group of people. The core of Bolshevik party, it's 20, maybe 30 people. And yet, the politics that they took, the actions that they made after October Revolution of 1917, because there was two revolutions, so let me remind you, because the actions that was made by Bolshevik party, by communists, provided majority of population insurance or assured them of the future that lay ahead of them. And nothing changed since, because don't forget, the same scene, same actions, same people was involved in World War II. And World War II was won not because everyone was afraid of Stalin. It's the same myth that coming from the Russian Revolution. Everybody was afraid of small group of people, and here we see the same thing. Everybody was afraid of small group of people. And World War II was won not because Stalin made people afraid, but because there was assurance, the insurance, I guess, that future that lies ahead is better than what was previously. And it was true. Stalin never gave up that line that Bolsheviks presented in 1917. Yes, the next general secretaries of the Communist Party was how to say it, not provided, I forget. Well, let's say created another line of the following the Marx-Lenin ideas, but Stalin until the end he made the same line. He goes the same line with the same outcome, and the outcome was that majority of population was raised from the poverty and slave-like conditions to be able live, survive, and be sure that future that lies ahead is better than it was before. Because capitalistic nature of Russian Empire that was approached, let's say, by the emperor previously to 1917, it was like no promises for the working people, no promises for serfs, for majority of population. When Stalin and Lenin not only promised but also deliver, let's say, well, that's the word. Stalin and Lenin deliver the promises they made for majority of population, and that is why small group of people took over and monopolize the power in a country. It wasn't because Jews or foreign forces or foreign money involvement, etc., etc. To claim that made you a person who very uneducated, believe in conspiracy theories, and goes against historical process. Our economy of Russian Empire before 1917 was based on huge exploitation of the people who lived in slave-like conditions, even in big cities, when they worked on factories. There was no social lifts, there was no social gains. You couldn't rise from the dirt that you was born in. When Stalin not only promised it but also provided such how to say it, such opportunities for people. That is why Bolshevik Party, but that is why communists won not only Russian Revolution, but also the Civil War and also the World War II. Yes, the line that was created after Stalin's death was not the same with what the Stalin is promised to people. And that is why you see drastic changes after Stalin's death. Condemnation of Stalin's figure, of Stalin's persona. Condemnation of the actions of the Stalin. Don't forget, no one condemned Lenin. Just like in today's China, no one condemned Mao. But, you know, so no one condemned Lenin in USSR after the Stalin death, but everybody jumped on the dead body of the Stalin to go away, move away from this line that allow people to be able not only get involved in politics and economical process of the country, but also higher education was taken away in some shape. Of course, the same lifts, the same opportunities stays until the 1991. You always could get free education at whatever discipline you like and be promoted with your according to your abilities. You can gain a lot a greater position and gain more money, of course, because of it. But with time, the political structure of Russian, let's say Soviet Empire has changed, and Communist Party monopolized posts. It was like if you were the child of the general, probably you would also someday will become a general. It's very important question when you're trying to jump on this bandwagon of it was all commies all bad and etc., that commies starve people to death, which is obviously not true. The commies all that bad and simply the tools of some, I don't know, foreign forces, Jews, or whatever, world cabal. There was objective process behind the Russian Revolution of 1917, of February Russian Revolution. Changes that was made by the people who took over the country wasn't that great at all, even worsened the situation. And of course, situation was even worse because of the World War I, which Russian Empire was involved in by its own wish. So, in such conditions, in such terms, in knowing all of this, you must understand that not only Bolsheviks couldn't, but also Bolsheviks didn't took anybody's money, was sold out to someone, or I don't know, something else. Russian Revolution happens because of objective process, because conditions of life of the poorest 85 to even up to 90% of population was simply not comparable with living. Many people died, many people starved, many people lived in literally on the streets sometimes. And in these conditions, liberation of working people was the main objective for the Bolsheviks, for communists. And they not only proclaimed, but also delivered their promises that we will provide equal opportunities for everyone. And to everyone means absolutely everyone, even for the people who were previously rich and who previously abused and exploited the same working people. The same opportunities was provided for anyone. Absolutely anyone could still live in this system, live in this country, and prosper. On new terms, of course. When everything belonged to everyone. Literally. And that is why small group of people took over the big country, biggest country in the world. Not because small group of people, 20 or 30 people, scared to death all the population of Russian Empire. That's like stupid as fuck. And even during the World War, when literally full armies was armed with, tanks, cannons, arms, etc. No one rebelled against against Stalin and his regime. The only people who rebelled against it was those people who lost everything, lost their ability to exploit other people. Those people during the USSR period defected, become traitors, sell out their country, sell out the secrets, like Solzhenitsyn, for example, or the person who provided quote-unquote numbers of death, millions of dead Russians in gulags. So you must not only understand that not all defectors run in United States for a better life. No, they run for the same life that allowed them exploit other people that they experienced previously to 1917, and that was uncomparable with life of the empire. Empire would collapse under itself anyway, and it collapsed in 1917 when Tsar simply stepped out of the throne. So there was objective economical, first of all, economical process that led to Russian Revolution, February Russian Revolution of 1917, which Bolsheviks wasn't involved at all. And only when people who took over, well, that allowed Bolsheviks to come back in country because they all was aboard, trying to survive. And when those people who took over Russian Empire during the short period from February to October failed miserably, the second revolution happens, which also wasn't all that Bolsheviks. Many left parties was involved in that revolution, but majority still was for the Social Democrats, Constitutional Democrats, etc., etc. And only when even those small groups of people, because there was not only two, because there was more than that, when every one of them failed miserably, and Bolsheviks simply took over, when some parties simply declined to deal with Bolsheviks because they wasn't in support of this new idea of equal opportunities for everyone. No, they still was in support of let's oppress more. Let's oppress some agricultural population of the Russian Empire more. And therefore they declined to deal with Bolsheviks. And then, only then, Bolsheviks took over. And still it was very small chunk of people. Yes, it was already thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. Still, Russian Empire was more than 100 million people. And still, inside the country, there was any shapes and forms of political of parties that was in different political spectrum from each other, sometimes even on the same page. There was a whole lot of different parties. There was a whole lot of different people who led these royalist ideas. And yet, the things that Bolshevik party provided to people, promised of course, but next, provided to people, give them a glimpse what country will be in the nearest future, lead people to support the Bolsheviks, support the Communist Party of Soviet Union, instead of all those people around there. British army, German army, French army, Turkish army, who was American army, of course, United States. How could you not steal something from someone? Japanese army, all those armies, there was different armies also. All those was presented in Soviet Russia during the time. And if majority of the people would support those armies, if armies that was very good, had very good equipment and was fully armed, would gain support of majority, believe me, if Bolsheviks was so bad, they would fall. Eventually, once they would fall, because in chaos, the only people who can gain support of majority population will win, which exactly is what happened. And not because of empty promises, but because of things Bolsheviks, communists delivered to the majority of population. It's a very important question to understand and to get alone, not get alone, but to move on further from this. to understand what is what was behind the objective process of communist movement. And since then, and yes, nobody saying that there was no innocent victims or no one was killed for just because. For God's sake, there was literal civil war, which not Bolsheviks started. Don't forget about it. Bolsheviks didn't start the war. People who wanted to get back the emperor on the throne started the war to gain back their ability to exploit population. So, and heading from that, you could understand how many lies do you know about communists overall. How many lies do you know about Soviet Union? How many lies do you know about communist idea, etc., etc., etc. And in today's world, when there is plenty of information in the open, many people prefer to believe in some conspiracy theories that have no basis in historical documents, that have no basis in reality simply, like nothing in common with reality. Like communists came to take over the Russian Empire and destroy the city, and yet they built country, rebuilt country twice after World War I and Civil War and after World War II, and become the greatest economy in the world without any oppression of the population. It's a very important topic and question for Westerners to understand. And if you still hearing this would insist that you know Russian history better than Russian people, than Russian historians who have access to all the documents, that means that you brainwashed idiots, useful idiots for the system, for the rich, for the corporations. Not because I want to label you this, but because you denying actual reality, what was happening in Russia, what is well known according to documents, according to everything that in the open, according to simply because of what happened, what USSR achieved in the end before it collapsed. Simply saying that communism failed because it was inefficient, planned economy was inefficient, people were starving, people were starved to death, there was all kind of holodomors, etc. It's simply spreading American myths about communists, about people who really fought for the interest of majority. It means that you deny yourself ability to rule over your country.